The sun hung lazily over the bustling market, its golden light glinting off rows of colorful fruits and vegetables. The air was thick with the scent of ripe mangoes, freshly baked bread, and the earthy tang of dust kicked up by countless feet. Amid the noise and chatter of vendors shouting prices, one man stood out, not because of his clothes, which were plain and patched, but because of his eyes. They were calm, sharp, and watchful, like someone who saw much more than he let on. His name was Adam. To the people of the market, he was just another struggling tomato seller. He pushed his old wooden cart every morning, smiling politely, never raising his voice, never haggling too hard. But behind the rough shirt and the worn sandals, Adam hid a secret. He was no ordinary vendor. He was the only son of Victor Harrington, the reclusive billionaire who owned half the city's real estate. For months, Adam had lived among ordinary people, learning their ways, feeling their struggles. His father had taught him everything about wealth, but nothing about truth. People love money, Victor used to say coldly. And when you have it, they'll do anything to stand beside you. Adam had watched countless women chase his father's fortune, watched his own relationships crumble the moment the word inheritance appeared. So he made a choice. He would disappear into anonymity and find someone who could love him for his heart, not his heritage. That's how he ended up in the market, his identity hidden behind a life of simplicity. For 3 months, no one had looked at him twice, until she appeared. Her name was Lila. She was not the kind of woman who turned heads at first glance. Her clothes were modest, her hands calloused from work, her laughter soft but sincere. She sold handmade scarves at the corner stall, her little brother always sitting nearby with a book. Adam noticed her long before she noticed him. He admired the way she treated her customers, never flattering, never begging. She smiled even when people walked away without buying. One morning, when the market was just waking, Lila's brother tripped and fell, scattering his books across the dusty ground. Before Lila could react, Adam was already kneeling beside the boy, gathering the pages carefully. "Careful, champ," he said with a grin. "The ground's no place for dreams." Lila looked up, surprised by his words, and by his eyes. There was something about the way he looked at her, like he actually saw her. Not just the vendor, not the poor woman, but her. From that day, a quiet friendship began. They would talk while arranging their stalls, share a cup of tea when the afternoon sun grew too harsh, and sometimes laugh about the strange customers who bargained over a few coins. Adam never spoke of his past, and Lila never asked. She assumed he was just another kind, humble man trying to survive. And to Adam, that was enough. But the truth has a way of creeping into even the simplest lives. One stormy evening, as the market closed early, a black car rolled through the muddy street, an unusual sight in that part of town. The windows were tinted, the engine purred softly. The market folk stared as it stopped right beside Adam's stall. A tall man in a tailored suit stepped out, holding an umbrella. "Sir," the man said urgently, "your father's condition has worsened. The doctors say you must return at once." The world seemed to freeze. Lila turned slowly, confusion spreading across her face. The vendors whispered. Adam's secret life was spilling into the open. He looked at the man coldly. "I told you not to come here," he said quietly. "Sir, please," the man insisted. "Your father, he doesn't have long." The rain began to fall, heavy and relentless. Adam turned toward Lila, his heart pounding. He could see the questions in her eyes, the disbelief, the sudden distance forming between them. You're not a tomato seller," she whispered, voice trembling. Adam wanted to explain, but words felt useless. Every sentence would sound like a lie now. He could only watch as she stepped back, her face pale, her expression wounded, not by the truth itself, but by the thought that he had hidden it from her. He left the market that night, leaving behind his stall, his simple life, and the woman who had made it all feel real. Days turned into weeks. His father's funeral was quiet, attended only by powerful men in dark suits. Adam inherited everything: money, estates, and an empire built on ambition. But all he could think about was the sound of Lila's voice and the way she had looked at him before she knew. He sent people to find her, but no one could. Her stall was gone. Her little brother's bookseller said they had moved away, chasing work in another town. Adam searched for months, but it was as if she had vanished completely. Until one cold evening, nearly a year later, when fate decided to return what it had taken. He was walking through a small town on the outskirts of the city, dressed simply despite his wealth. Snow was falling, muffling the sound of passing cars. Then he saw her, standing outside a little café, arranging scarves on a wooden rack. She looked the same, maybe a little thinner, a little sadder. Adam stopped, his breath catching in his throat. He could have walked away. He could have let her live her life, free of the lies he once told. But he couldn't. Not when every night since that rainy evening had felt like punishment. He took a slow step forward, his voice trembling as he spoke her name. Lila. She turned. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Snowflakes melted in her hair as she looked at him, her expression unreadable. Then, quietly, she said, "Why are you here?" Her voice was calm, almost too calm, as if she had prepared herself for this moment 1,000 times in her mind. Adam's throat tightened. He wanted to smile, to ease the tension that hung between them like an invisible wall, but his lips wouldn't obey. "I came to see you," he said finally, his tone gentle, almost pleading. "I've been looking for you everywhere." Lila didn't move. Her hands were still resting on the rack of scarves, fingers gripping the soft fabric as though it anchored her to the ground. Her eyes, however, were distant, watchful and guarded. "You had the world at your feet, Adam," she said quietly. "Why would you come looking for a market girl?" He stepped closer, but she subtly leaned back. The snow crunched under his shoes. "Because you were the only person who saw me," he murmured. "Not my name, not my family's money. Just me." Her laugh was soft, but edged with hurt. "You say that now, but you lied. You made me believe you were someone else. You had every chance to tell me the truth." Adam's chest tightened. "I wanted to," he said, his voice rough. "Every single day. But every time I looked at you, I was afraid that if I told you who I really was, I'd lose the only honest thing I'd ever found." Lila shook her head, blinking back the sting in her eyes. "You don't understand. It wasn't about who you were. It was about trust. You hid the truth, Adam. And trust, once broken, doesn't heal easily." He swallowed hard. Around them, the streetlights began to flicker on, painting the snow in a golden glow. People walked by, bundled in coats, but to Adam and Lila, the world had shrunk to that tiny patch of snow between them. "I know," he said softly, "and I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to see you again, to tell you that I never meant to hurt you." She looked away, her breath visible in the cold air. "You can't just walk back into my life like nothing happened. You don't belong here anymore." Adam hesitated, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small cloth bundle. "I didn't come to drag you back into my world," he said, unwrapping it. Inside lay a delicate silver bracelet with tiny charms shaped like leaves. "Do you remember the day your brother dropped his books? You lost this then. I kept it safe all this time." Her eyes flicked down to the bracelet. It was indeed hers, a small keepsake her late mother had given her. She hadn't even realized it was missing until long after Adam had vanished. The sight of it now stirred something deep within her, a rush of memories she had tried to bury. "I don't want it," she whispered, but her voice trembled. "I know," Adam said quietly, "but it belongs to you." He held it out, his hand open. For a long moment, she stared at it, then slowly took it, her fingers brushing his. A spark of warmth passed between them, fleeting yet powerful. They stood there in silence. The cafe door opened behind her, letting out a rush of warmth and laughter. A man's voice called, "Lila, the customers are waiting." Adam's heart stuttered. The voice belonged to a man around their age, tall, well-built, wearing a chef's apron. He looked at Adam with polite curiosity before turning to Lila. "Everything okay?" She nodded quickly. "Yes, Marcus. Just an old friend." Marcus smiled and disappeared back inside. Adam noticed the way she exhaled after he left, how her shoulders relaxed slightly. He didn't ask who Marcus was. He didn't need to. The distance between them was already clear. "I see you've built a new life," Adam said quietly. "Yes," she replied, wrapping her arms around herself. "After you left, I needed to start over. The market, it held too many memories. Marcus offered me a job here. He's kind." Adam nodded slowly. "I'm glad you found peace." "Peace," she repeated softly, almost as if tasting the word. "I'm not sure that's what it is, but it's something." The snow kept falling, settling in her hair, on his coat, on the silent space between them. "I thought I could forget you," she said after a while. "I try to hate you for what you did. But sometimes, when I walked through a market and heard someone shout prices, I'd think of you. And it hurt all over again. Adam's eyes softened. I never stopped thinking of you either. Every day felt empty. I realized too late that I had traded truth for fear. Lila's gaze met his. There was no anger now, only a tired sadness, like someone who had cried too long and run out of tears. Then why come now? What do you want from me, Adam? He hesitated. A chance, he said finally. Not to fix the past. I know I can't. But to prove that I'm still the man you once believed I was. She shook her head slowly. You can't prove love with promises. It's not about wealth or words. It's about time, consistency, trust rebuilt piece by piece. And that takes more than just showing up after a year. I'll do whatever it takes, he said earnestly. I don't expect you to forgive me now, but let me stay near you. Let me help with the cafe, with anything you need. Let me earn back what I lost. Lila looked away again, her mind battling between reason and the quiet, aching part of her heart that still remembered how he used to smile, how he'd offered her tea in the scorching afternoons, how he'd said, "The ground's no place for dreams." You don't belong in this life anymore, she said softly. You're a Harrington now. People like you don't stay long in small towns. Then I'll leave the name behind, he said without hesitation. Money, estate, all of it means nothing if it costs me you. Her eyes flickered with surprise. You can't just abandon it all. He stepped closer, his gaze steady. Why not? I've already seen what it's worth. I'd trade every cent for another morning in the market beside you. The emotion in his voice made her heart ache. She turned away, blinking rapidly as the snow thickened. You're making this harder, she whispered. Maybe it was never supposed to be easy, he replied gently. Maybe we had to lose each other to understand what we were fighting for. She drew in a shaky breath. I don't know, Adam. I don't know anymore. He didn't press her. He simply stood there, waiting, his breath shallow in the icy air. Then he said quietly, I'll be around. Even if you don't want to see me, I'll be here, helping, waiting, hoping. And maybe one day, when you're ready, we can start over. Not as a billionaire and a market girl, just as Adam and Lila. She said nothing. The cafe lights glowed behind her, golden and warm, while he stood under the cold night sky. Their worlds had diverged, yet something unspoken tethered them still. After a moment, Lila looked up, her eyes glistening under the soft snowfall. You always did have a way of saying the right things, she murmured. But words are fragile, Adam. I'll believe them when they turn into actions. He nodded slowly. Then I'll show you. Without another word, she turned and walked inside the cafe, the door closing softly behind her. Adam remained outside, his breath clouding in the frosty air, a quiet determination burning in his chest. He looked through the window as she served a customer, her movements graceful, her smile faint but real. And as he stood there in the snow, a small smile curved on his lips, not of triumph, but of hope. He knew this wasn't the end. Not yet. Somewhere deep down, he could feel it. The story between them was far from over. And no amount of time or distance could silence the pull that had begun the day he helped a little boy pick up his fallen books in a dusty old market. Winter gave way to spring, and in the small town where the cafe stood, the snow melted into streams that whispered through cobblestone streets. Weeks passed since that night Adam had found Lila again. True to his word, he stayed. He didn't come with flowers or grand declarations. He came quietly, each morning, sweeping the street in front of the cafe before it opened, carrying crates of fruit from the market, helping without ever asking for anything in return. At first, Lila ignored him. She served customers with her polite smile, never acknowledging the man outside polishing the cafe sign or fixing the broken fence. But Marcus noticed. Your friend's been working harder than half the staff, Marcus remarked one morning as he wiped down the counter. You sure you don't want to tell him to stop? Lila glanced through the window. Adam was outside, shirt sleeves rolled, face glistening with effort as he repaired the wooden bench where children liked to sit with muffins after school. She didn't answer Marcus. Instead, she just said, he doesn't listen. Marcus chuckled. Seems like he's trying to prove something. Lila's hands stilled over the tray she was arranging. Maybe, she said softly, but I didn't ask for proof. Still, every day he came. Some days he brought food for the children in the neighborhood. Some evenings he stayed late to fix small things around the cafe that others ignored. He never spoke of money, never boasted, never hinted at who he truly was. To the town, he was simply Adam, the man who helped everyone without expecting anything. Slowly, her heart began to soften. One night, after closing, she found him sitting alone under the lamppost across from the café. The street was quiet except for the hum of crickets. She hesitated, then walked over. "You missed a spot," she said teasingly, nodding at the half-painted fence. He looked up, startled, then smiled. Just a faint, tired smile that made her chest tighten. "I'll fix it in the morning," he said. "You've been fixing everything," she said, crossing her arms. "The benches, the lights, the shelves inside." "What?" He leaned back, looking at the night sky. "Because it's something I can do. I can't fix the past. I can't erase the lie. But maybe I can build something good around it." She sat beside him, the cool air brushing against her face. "You don't have to do all this, Adam. You don't owe me anything." "I know," he said softly. "But I owe myself the chance to do right by you. Even if you never forgive me." Silence hung between them, deep but comfortable. Lila looked at him, the man who had once lived in luxury, now sitting in a small-town street covered in paint and dust, his eyes gentle but tired. Something inside her stirred, a quiet recognition of sincerity. "You're different," she said quietly. "I had to lose everything to learn what matters," he replied. "When my father died, I inherited his empire, but I also inherited his emptiness. I realized money never filled the silence in a lonely heart." Lila looked down, her fingers tracing the edge of the bench. "You think love can fill it?" He turned to her. "Not love built on wealth. Love built on truth, patience, and forgiveness." She said nothing, but her heart beat a little faster. In the weeks that followed, Adam became part of the town's rhythm. He worked at the cafe as a volunteer, delivering food to the elderly, teaching the children small lessons about business and kindness. People began to like him, not because of his charm or hidden riches, but because of his quiet humility. Lila watched all of this from a distance, trying not to let hope take root, but it did. One evening, when the sky was painted in gold and rose, the cafe hosted its first anniversary celebration. The townsfolk gathered, laughing and singing as the scent of baked bread and cinnamon filled the air. Lila was busy serving tea when Marcus tapped her shoulder. "There's someone asking for you outside," he said with a knowing smile. She stepped out, and there he was, Adam, dressed neatly but simply, holding a single red tulip. "You remembered my favorite flower," she said, surprised. "I remember everything about you," he said softly. "Even the way you laugh when you're trying not to." Lila's cheeks warmed. "You've been here for months now. You've helped everyone. You've kept your promise." "I didn't do it for gratitude," he said. "I did it because I wanted to build something real this time. No lies. No masks." She looked at him, her eyes uncertain. "And when your business world calls you back? When people realize who you are?" "I already sold it," he said. Her head snapped up. "You what?" He smiled faintly. "The estate, the shares, everything. I gave most of it to charity, kept only enough to live simply. I wanted to be free of that name. I wanted a life that doesn't depend on my father's shadow." Lila's breath caught. "You gave up billions." "I gave up emptiness," he corrected, "for something that might be real." Tears welled in her eyes, not from sadness but from disbelief at the depth of his sincerity. "You're a fool," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Maybe," he said softly, "but a happy one." The tulip trembled in his hand as he held it out to her. "I don't expect you to say yes today, or tomorrow, but if you ever believe that I'm the man you thought I was in the market, the one who cared, not because of who you were, but because of what you carried inside, then maybe you'll give me another chance." She took the flower slowly, her fingers brushing his. "You already have your chance," she murmured. "You've been earning it every day since the snow melted." For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to smile fully. Days turned into months, and the cafe flourished. Adam became its quiet partner, handling supplies, helping children study in the evenings, always humble, always kind. The townsfolk adored him, unaware of his past, seeing only the man he had become. Sometimes, when business slowed, he and Lila would sit outside, sharing tea, watching the sunset paint the sky. They didn't talk much about the past anymore. They didn't need to. It had shaped them, tested them, and brought them here, to a place where truth finally had room to breathe. But one summer evening, as they sat together under the fading light, Lila finally spoke what she had kept inside. Do you ever regret it? She asked softly. Giving it all up? He shook his head, smiling faintly. I regret the years I spent chasing the wrong things. But giving it up? No. I found what my father never did, peace. She studied him for a long moment, then whispered, You found me. He turned toward her, his eyes warm. No, he said gently. You found me. I was lost long before the market. Her lips curved into a smile, small but real. The kind that carried forgiveness, healing, and beginnings. He reached for her hand. This time, she didn't pull away. Their fingers intertwined naturally, as if they had been waiting to find each other again all along. From across the street, children's laughter rang out, mingling with the hum of life that filled the town. The cafe windows glowed softly behind them, casting golden light over their faces. The world had grown quiet around them, yet inside that stillness, something vibrant pulsed. Hope, rebirth, love. Adam looked up at the stars, then back at her. Do you ever miss the market? He asked lightly. Sometimes, she said. But I think the best parts of it came with me. He smiled. Then maybe we can start one here. Together. Her brows rose. A market? He nodded. A community space. For local sellers, artists, dreamers. A place where no one is judged by what they wear or what they own, only by what they create. Lila's eyes softened. You really haven't changed, have you? Oh, I've changed, he said, chuckling softly. I've just found the parts of me that were worth keeping. And as the last traces of daylight slipped away, she leaned her head gently against his shoulder. Neither spoke. They didn't need words. The silence between them was full now, not empty. Above them, the stars shimmered like a promise kept. The same stars that had watched a lonely heir disguise himself as a poor market seller were now witnessing the quiet peace of two hearts that had finally found home, not in wealth or illusion, but in truth, humility, and love that had been tested and proven real. And for the first time since he had left the gilded halls of his father's empire, Adam felt something he had never known before. He didn't just belong somewhere. He belonged to someone. The world outside the cafe carried on with its noise and motion, unaware that within this small, unremarkable town, a story had come full circle. A man who had once pretended to be poor had discovered the richness of the human heart. And beside him, the woman who had once sold scarves beneath a tin roof smiled, not because she had fallen for a billionaire, but because she had learned that love, when it's real, doesn't need gold to shine. The night deepened, the cafe lights dimmed, and the sound of gentle laughter drifted into the quiet streets. Their story wasn't written in luxury, but in forgiveness, faith, and the quiet power of second chances. And though neither of them said it aloud, both knew that what they had now, this fragile, beautiful simplicity, was worth more than all the riches in the world.